This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets. China's oil refinery throughput in April rose 18.9% from a year earlier to the second highest level on record, data showed on Tuesday, as refiners maintained high runs to meet recovering domestic fuel demand and build stockpiles ahead of the summer travel season. Total refinery throughput in the world's second-largest oil consumer reached 61.1 million tons, data from the National Bureau of Statistics, (NBS), showed, equivalent to 14.87 million barrels per day, BPD. That compares with 12.6 million barrels of oil per day in April last year, when throughput slumped due to the impact of widespread COVID-19 lockdowns on domestic fuel demand.
Oil futures steadied on Tuesday as support from a higher global demand forecast from the International Energy Agency, IEA, was countered by weaker-than-expected Chinese economic data. Brent crude futures eased by 11 cents, or 0.2%, to $75.12 a barrel by 0922 GMT, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was down 12 cents, or 0.2%, at $70.99. Both benchmarks rose more than 1% on Monday, reversing a three-session losing streak. The IEA raised its forecast for global oil demand this year by 200,000 barrels per day, BPD, to a record 102 million barrels of oil per day.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Weeks of declining oil prices due to concerns over a possible recession clash with the outlook for scarce supply and robust demand later in the year, the International Energy Agency said on Tuesday. Prices were pressured lower by muted industrial activity and higher interest rates, which, combined, have led to recessionary scenarios gaining traction, the Paris-based agency said in its monthly oil report. The current market pessimism, however, stands in stark contrast to the tighter market balances we anticipate in the second half of the year, when demand is expected to eclipse supply by almost 2 million barrels per day, BPD.
U.S. oil output from the 7 biggest shale basins is due to rise in June to the highest on record, data from the Energy Information Administration showed on Monday. Oil output is set to rise by 41,000 barrels per day, BPD, to 9.33 million barrels of oil per day, the IEA said. Crude output in the Permian Basin in Texas and New Mexico, the biggest U.S. shale oil basin, is expected to rise by 15,000 barrels of oil per day to a record high 5.71 million barrels of oil per day. In the Bakken region of North Dakota and Montana, output is due to rise 13,000 barrels of oil per day to 1.23 million barrels of oil per day, the highest since November 2020.
Next, we have the top news in metal markets.
China's crude steel output in April fell 3.2% from a month earlier and was down 1.5% from a year earlier, the Statistics Bureau said on Tuesday, as steel mills cut their production amid a slump in margins. The world's largest steel producer manufactured 92.64 million tons of the metal last month, data from the National Bureau of Statistics, (NBS), showed. The April volume compares with 95.73 million tons produced in March and 92.78 million tons in the same month in 2022, according to NBS data.
China's aluminium output in April rose 0.8% compared with a year ago, data showed on Tuesday, with daily production picking up from the previous month thanks to some smelters resuming operations. China produced 3.33 million tons of aluminium last month, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, or an average of 111,000 tons per day, based on Reuters calculations. That compares with March output of 3.37 million tons or an average of 108,710 tons daily. We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector. India slashed the base import prices of crude palm oil, soyoil, and silver, and raised the price of gold, the government said in a statement late on Monday. The government revises base import prices of edible oils, gold and silver every fortnight, and the prices are used to calculate the amount of tax an importer needs to pay. India is the world's biggest importer of edible oils and silver and the second biggest consumer of gold.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.